homework here. So 2.7 is what is due tonight, and then you will be concentrate more on your midterm, which is on chapter 2. Your midterm is either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday, depends on your last name. So if you have any questions with 2.7, you can ask me right now. And then once we finish 2.7 today, we will be spending some time reviewing for your midterms. So make sure you guys, if you have any questions, you can ask me about midterms and everything. So anyone have any questions on 2.7 on the inverse function? Anyone have any homework questions on 2.7? Anyone? 2.7 questions? Can you explain 27? Yes, I can do that. Please, again, I will point out to you where once we got this closed, but I'm gonna go 2.7, question 27. This one. Good. All right. So this is 2.7, question number 27. It's given us by f of x is 1 over 8 x minus 9, and g of x is x cubed. And the question is asking us to find the g inverse dot f inverse of a negative 9. So this is what the question wants us to find for question 27 on 2.7 here. So what we need to do first here is we have to find the inverse function for the f, and we also need to find the inverse function for the g. So we have to find the inverse function for both of these first, and then we can use the composition to do this. So this is a combination of 2.6 and 2.7. So how do we find the inverse function of f of x? Anyone remember how you do this? This is very important because it's in your test tomorrow. Anyone remember how you find your inverse function for f of x? Anyone? F of x? Hello? Switch x and yep. Turn f into y and switch x and y and solve for y. Very good. You guys are correct. Zainab and Young Pao, you're correct. So yep, you switch this into y. So y is equals to 1 over 8x minus 9. And then you switch your x and y around. So you got x equals to 1 over 8y minus 9. So you switch your x and y, and then you solve for y. So how do we solve for y? We add 9 to the other side. So you got x plus 9 is equals to 1 over 8y. And then after that, we multiply everything here by 8 so that the 8 will be canceled out. So your inverse function in this case is 8x plus 72. I just distribute by 8. You do the same thing for g of x. But g of x is easier to do because g of x in this case is x cubed. So y in this case is x cubed. And then you switch around your x and y. So you get x equals to y cubed. And then you solve for y. So in order for us to get rid of the cube, you have to cube root both sides. So your inverse function of g is given us by cube root of x. So this is the inverse function of f, and this is the inverse function of g. So this is the important piece for question 27. So, and then now we have to do this part. So when you have a dot product, we're going to do the back one first. So every time when you do the dot product, you do the back one first. And what is this back one telling us to do is f, the inverse of f of negative 9. So what does that mean here is you just plug all your x to become negative 9. So 8 times negative 9 plus 72. What you guys got? Where's that number? Now we're doing the question here. Where's 8 plus negative 9? 8 times negative 9 plus 72. So we are doing this back part first. This is going to be what?
You're right.
Eric, what do you say? Yeah. 0, right? Yep. You get 0. So in this case that you are looking for the inverse function, the G inverse function of 0. This 0 comes from this 0 that you just calculate. And as we know that the inverse function of 0 for G is x, cube root of x, but our x in this case is 0. And cube root of 0 is still 0. So your answer in this case will be 0. So this is how we do this question on 27. So the G inverse F inverse of negative 9 is 0. Okay. Now, if they give you a number in here, means your answer has to be a number. But but like 28, so 28 is a very similar to 27 because the only difference here, this is 9, this is 7. So I just use that. But this question is asking us G dot, the inverse of G dot inverse of F X. So when you see an X in here, it means that you have your answer here is in terms of X. So what is going on if I want to do question 28, but I'm going to still use this number. Okay, I'm going to still use this function, the 108x minus 9 and x cubed. And for 28, you are doing the inverse dot, the G of inverse dot F of inverse of x. So what is going on in this case is you have to do the inverse of F of x first, which we know is going to be this one. We just did it. 8x plus 72. I'm going to just put that back in the, let me just redo this. I'm going to put this back in factor form, 8x plus 9, because they will see later on what's going on. So I just factor out the 8, so become x plus 9. So what happened is that I do the inverse of f, which is this one. And then after that, what do I do here is I will plug this cube root of x in here, because that is the G inverse. So in this case, it will be a cube root of x, but our x in this case will be replaced by 8x plus 9. And the reason why I factor out the 8 early on, like last for this question, is because 8 is a perfect cube of 2. So your answer in this case will be 2 cube root of x plus 9. So this is how we do question number 28. So what we do in this case for question number 28 is you have to do the inverse, the F inverse first, which is we found out is 8x plus 72 or 8x plus 9 if you factor it. And then after that, you have to replace it with the cube root. So that means that so the cube root of 8 is a 2. So you will get the 2 and then the cube of x plus 9. And this will be your answer for question number 28. But do not forget, this 28 is a different 28 from here because last time is a minus 9. This is a minus 7. So I didn't change it. Okay. And then for the last question, 29. So these 3 questions are very, very difficult. And it's not in your test. I want to point out to you these 3 questions that we are doing right now is not going to be in your test. So how do we do question number 29 here? Is they give you 2 functions, which is f of x equals to x plus 7. And g of x is 2x minus 5. And they want you to figure out what is the g dot f inverse of x. So do you see the difference between 29 and 28? 28 is what we just did here, is where you do the inverse. You have to find the inverse of f, and then you have to find the inverse of g, like what we did over here. And then after that, you plug it in. But for question 29, you have to do the composition first. You have to do the dot first. And then once you do the composition product of this, and then you find the inverse like what we did in here, where you switch your x and y around and then you solve for y. So what we did here is g dot f. So first thing we need to do is find what is g dot f of x. Does anyone know how to find g dot f of x in this case? For 29, what is g dot f of x means? Does that mean you are going to multiply these two and FOIL it out? This is what a lot of students do this in my midterm and they got it wrong. They thought this dot is multiply. So they take these two and FOIL it out. You get 0 in your test. Okay. So anyone know how to do the g dot f of x here? You guys did it on last 2.6. That's the section that you guys did.
I think we put f of x, we plug on f of x inside.
Inside where? F of x inside where?
For g of x.
Very good. That is correct because the f of x comes at the very end. So yes, that is correct. So you put the f of x, which is x plus 7, into the g of x, like substitution. So what you get here is 2 times x plus 7 minus 5. That is correct, Mohar. Next, you have to distribute and simplify this. So you will get 2x plus 14 minus 5. I forget you said of minus 5. So that will give me 2x plus 9. So this is the g dot f of x solution. But your answer wants you to find g dot f of the inverse. So what do we do here is the same thing as what we did over here. How do you find the inverse function like what you guys did to me? You told me before. First, you change the g dot f of x become y. And then after that, you interchange your x and y. And then you solve for y, right? So when you solve for y, you subtract 9. This is gone. And then you divide everything here by 2. So your answer in this case is given us by this answer, x minus 9 all over by 2. So this is your answer for question number 29. You guys doing all right here so far with the last 3 questions in this case? This is x minus 9 over 2. All over by 2. X minus 9 over 2. You guys have any? You guys doing well? Okay here with this? Questions you guys have for me on 2.7? Anyone have any questions for me? 25. Okay, 25. Perfect. Is that Pao asking me that question? Yeah. I want you guys to really pay attention on this 25 here. The reason why I say is because it is coming up in your midterm tomorrow or this week. Okay. So it's given us by f of x in this case is 3x minus 7 over by 5x plus 3. So the first question is asking us is, does this has an inverse function? Okay, so the first thing they ask you is, does this has an inverse function? Your answer is either yes or no. So it's either is yes or no. Again, class, this is in your midterm tomorrow, so please pay attention. So how do we know that if this has an inverse function? Anyone know? How do we know if this one has an inverse function? Anyone know what to do? What kind of rules or conditions you have to, or requirements you have to do to check for inverse function? Anyone?
Well, it has regular function first, right?
Yeah, it's a function, which we know is a function because it's f of x. So once you see the f of x means it's already is a function. Very good. And what is the second rule? Talked about it last week, really briefly. It has to be one-on-one. What's the meaning of the word one-on-one? Means if you plug X, any number you want, you only get one answer for Y. Okay, you plug any X you have in here, and you only get one answer for Y. And if you have that, then it is one-to-one, it has inverse. So can someone tell me what number should we plug in here? Any number you want. Anyone wants to plug in a number here? Yep, 0. Okay, we plug in 0, any number you want. 0.5, 3, 1, negative. Plug in here, plug 0 in here. What you get is -7/3. Do you have one answer or more than one answer?
Just one answer.
Just one answer. And if you want to plug in any number besides 0, like 1, only one answer, one value, plug X become 1, you will get 3 minus 7/5 plus 3, which will give you -4/8. Do you have one answer or you have multiple answers? For if you use X is 1. You also get one answer. So what happens here is no matter what number you plug in for X, you always end up with one answer or one solution. That means this is a one-to-one. So does this has an inverse function? The answer is yes, it does have an inverse function. So for this case, it does have an inverse function. So now we need to find the inverse function. So part B, you have to find the inverse function. So does same thing happens last time when we did the inverse function. Remember, we changed this become Y, and then we switch your X and Y around. So we got X equals to 3Y minus 7 over by 5Y plus 3. And then you have to solve for Y. So this solving for Y is a little bit difficult from the one that you just did just now because it has two Y's in this case. So does anyone here know how to solve for Y in this case? This is what is coming up in your test. And this one worth a lot, like 6 points in here. Anyone know how to solve for Y here? Okay, if you doesn't know, please pay attention. And if you want, please go back and watch this video again because my 4th time telling you is in your midterm today and then this week. So first thing what I need is I get to get rid of this fraction. So I'm going to multiply 5y plus 3 on both sides. So these two will cancel out. And what I do with this x is I distribute it inside. So what do I have in this case is 5xy plus 3x is equals to 3y minus 7. So that is the first step you do is you multiply this over to the other side and you distribute the x. So what we do next here is we try to solve for y. So the one with the y terms that you see here, we want to make these y terms into one side of the equation. It's like solving equation. And the one that without the y terms, you want it to be on the other side of the equation. So what do I do here is I will move the 3y over here. So when I move the 3y to that side, that 3y is a positive. So once you move it, it becomes negative. And then I also want to move my 3x over there. So my 3x used to be positive, but once you move it, it becomes negative. And then you still have the minus 7. So this is your next step, which is a lot of students doesn't know what to do here. So we are moving all the y's on one side and all the non-y variables on the other side. And what happens here now is because this one has all the y variables, you can factor the y out. So when you factor the y, you will get 5x minus 3 equals to negative 3x minus 7. And then the last thing is, in order for us to solve for y, we will divide this with what we have factored here. which is 5x minus 3. So this is your inverse function in this case, which is negative 3x minus 7, 5x minus 3. Now, I have a lot of students, they try to like invent an own game because it doesn't like, they're lazy, they doesn't want to do this. They say, oh, David, just look at this one. I just need to switch all my this all become negative. No, I want to point out to you is, it's not simply switching all the numbers here to negative and you will get your inverse function. That is not correct. You have to go through this step. This is the only way we can do this. Okay. Now, so this is your answer for here. You put it in here. But in your midterm this week, I will also ask you for the domain and the range of the function and the domain and range of the inverse function. So please pay attention if you do not know how to do this, because this is very, very important. Okay. So what do we need to do here is we have to find the domain of the function. Now, the original function is given us by this. Does anyone still remember how you figure out the domain of it?
It's all real numbers except for, or you have to find out the denominator.
Equals to?
Make sure it doesn't equal 0.
Yes. So this is a fraction. So in this case, you have to take 5x plus 3 equals to 0. Yes, your denominator cannot be equal to 0. So that's why you take this equals to 0 and you solve for x. So x in this case is negative 3 over 5. Means you subtract 3 and then you divide by 5. A lot of students tell me that the domain in this case is x equals to negative 3 over 5. If you give me this answer, I won't give you full point because this is not the correct answer. The correct answer should be all real numbers except x equals to negative 3 over 5.
Do you need it in interval notation too?
Yes, you can use it in the interval notation. What is the interval notation in this case, Eric, or just as Eric or Justin says that?
It's a, sorry if I'm wrong. It's bracket negative 3/5.
No.
Infinity on the other side.
Negative infinity to
negative 3/5.
Negative 3/5. And then what else? Union with what?
Negative 3/5 to infinity.
Yep. So in the test, I take either one of this, either this one or this one. I don't care. But make sure that if you want to write this, make sure you have the word all real numbers except x equals to something. Otherwise, you won't get full points. And this is how you write in the interval notation. Okay. The next thing we're going to figure out is the domain of the inverse function, because we got the inverse function already from what we did in part B. So the same thing happens here. Like on here, you set your denominator equals to 0. And can someone tell me what is your x in this case?
Positive 3/5.
3/5, yep. So your domain in this case will be what?
All real numbers except, except for 3/5.
Yep. So this x equals to 3/5. So so this is how, and then you can do, it's the same as this, you just change the negative, become positive 3/5. So we found the domain for the function and the domain for the inverse function. Now my question is asking is, how do you find the range of this function? Anyone know how to find the range of this? Actually, you do not need to find it. Why I say you do not need to find it? Like you do not need to really do math or any work on it. The reason why is because the range of this function is exactly the same as what? The domain of the inverse function. So that means the range for this is going to be all real numbers except what? X equals to 3/5. And can someone tell me what is the range of this inverse function? It's going to be the same as what? The domain of the original function, which is all real numbers except what?
-3/5.
-3/5. So make sure you guys know that the domain of the original function is the same as the range of the inverse function, and the range of the original function is the same as the domain of the inverse function. So they've been switched around, flip-flop, if you want to say it. So make sure you guys know about this. And yes, this is coming up in your midterm tomorrow, this week. So make sure you guys know how to do this. This was around 6 points in your midterm test. So I don't have any questions for this 2.5. I'm going to leave it here. So make sure you guys take a picture of it. If you have a camera or whatever you have, make sure you take a picture of it so you can see what's going on. Otherwise, before I end it up, anyone have any else questions on here on this question? Anyone have any questions for 2.7 for me beside these few questions?
Well, for this one, because since obviously we had the question, does this have inverse? So the ones that don't have inverse, we don't. Would we even?
You are correct, Eric. You're correct. So if you find yourself, if that is an inverse, you have to do the rest of it. But if you answer no here, then you do not need to do anything else after that, because if it's no inverse, then you cannot find the inverse function, and definitely you can do the domain, but cannot do the inverse for domain and range. So usually I can tell you in this class, your answer is always yes. That means you had to go through the whole process of the AB and everything that all the stuff that you do here. So I can tell you that in the test, I usually do not ask this in the test because a lot of students will answer no. And once you answer no, you get a big 0 in the whole question because the answer is always yes. So in the midterm, I won't ask you this. I will ask you just say, this has an inverse function. I want you to find it, which is like what we just did here. And then I want you to find the domain and range.
Okay.
Okay.
For examples of ones that wouldn't, would it be like the ones that are square rooted and then like
those you have a domain restriction. So for the square root and the square one like this one, that it has a domain restriction next to it.
Okay.
So once the only part that is not have an inverse function, there are two pieces. One is the square and one is the absolute value, because these two does not pass the horizontal line test. So that's why it doesn't have an inverse function. But we have to restrict the domain, then it has an inverse function. So that's why when you see in your homework, all the square and all the absolute value, it has a domain restriction, which is the one I highlight in blue here. That is why it makes it as a function. Okay, so only two in this class. And yes, you will learn more when you go on to calculus, but right in this class, we only learned that x squared and absolute value of x, you need a domain restriction for this. Otherwise, the rest of it, you don't. They all have an inverse function. Questions? Good, you guys are asking questions because these are all in your test. All right, since this question is coming up in your test, I want everyone here to do the same thing now. I want you guys to take out a piece of pencil, a piece of paper and write this out. I want you to find the inverse function of this 2x plus 5 over by 3x plus 1. I want you guys to find, yes, this has an inverse function. I want you guys to find the inverse function of it. And then once you finish finding the inverse function, you need to tell me what is the domain and range of the inverse function. I just want the domain and range of the inverse function. So this is your work now. Go ahead and start doing it. Here's the reference. If you need to refer to something, here's a reference. And I want you guys to private message me once you get your answer. Private, how will you find it? You just so once you find it, when you have a domain restriction POW, then you need to you have to figure out are they positive or negative. So when you see x squared, you will get the square root. One is a positive and one is a negative. So it depends on the domain restriction. If your domain restriction shows a positive, then we will take the positive one. If your domain restriction is a negative, shows a less than, which is a negative, then you will take the negative one. For example, POW, like here, this domain restriction is a negative because it's less than. So when you take the absolute value also have two. One is a positive and one is a negative. So since you have a negative, we will take the negative one. And say for 26, it's a greater sign. So if it's a greater sign, then we will take the positive one. So this is how we figure out which one do we pick, the plus or the minus. Depends on the domain restriction that you have. You got it here, Pao? So it's that's why when you do this, domain restriction has a very important role. Okay, so so make sure you look at either greater sign or less than sign. Greater sign is positive, less than sign is a negative. So I want you guys to go ahead and try to do this question because it's in your test. I told you already. Go ahead and do it. And if you doesn't know how to do it, please refer back to this question 25 that I have here. I'm going to start erasing this part because I don't have room to write it. And if you get your answer, please private message me. Don't message to everyone. Private message me. And how you private message me is you can click on the video, my video, right click it, and that is called a private message, and you will, and then you just type in your answer. I don't want everyone to see your answer. And I'm going to do it now while I'm waiting for you guys to Zain up. You're quick. Where is your 2 here? Let me, you guys are quick. You guys are good now. Good, I'm happy actually. And then make sure you also tell me what is the domain and range of this inverse function. Okay, I'm doing the work now. You guys are good. Let me see. You guys are all good. And again, Eric, make sure you write the domain and range correctly. Don't do that way. Yes, Zainab, you get it right. You just need to find the domain and range. Eric, you got it right, but your domain and range is for the original function. I want the domain of range of the inverse function. Okay, I want this one. Okay, I do not want the, you give me the original function, the f of x, not the inverse of x. So can you switch them around? Pao, you get it right. Zainab, all your domain is all your numbers except 2/3. That is correct. Eric is correct. Yep, Yang Pao is correct. Range is, yep, that is correct. Yep, Zainab is correct. Except what, Eric? You haven't, okay, yep. So Eric, make sure that if you just Eric, if you just type negative 1/3 and so on, 2/3 like that, you will get half a point off in your test for each one of these. So you get a point off. So make sure you put the word all real numbers except. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I just forgot to type it in.
Yep. Don't worry about that. Yang Pao, I just need to find the inverse function. I'm not interested to find the function. Yep. So it is correct. The domain for that is correct. Mercedes, can you retype it again? I think you type a typo in the, Mercedes. Your inverse function is wrong. Yes, Moha is correct. Yang Pao is correct. Range of the inverse function is, oh no, range is not. No, Yang Pao range is wrong. The range of the inverse function is wrong. Range, domain of it, range. Mercedes, you got your, again, Mercedes, your answer, the domain and range answer, you are giving me the original function. I want the inverse function, not the original function. And your inverse function is also wrong, Mercedes. So make sure you double check it. Just a little bit of typo. All right. So a lot of you know how to do this. Very good. So yes, again, this is in your test. This is worth 6 points. So what we do first is a lot of you get it right. So so we put this into y, and then after that I switch x and y around. So I put x equals to 2y plus 5 over by 3y plus 1. And then you multiply this to the x. So you distribute your x into here. So you got 3xy plus x equals to 2y plus 5. And then what you need to do here is I have to move all my y to one side. So Boha, I just need to find the inverse function. Okay. So I move the y over here and I move the x over here. So what do I have in this case is 3xy here. And since my 2y is a positive, when you move it, it becomes negative. And when I have an x is a positive, when I move it, become negative. And the plus 5 is still back there. And then since this one has y on both sides, so I can factor the y out. So you will get 3x minus 2. And then we still have a negative x plus 5 over here. And then after that, you divide everything here with 3x minus 2. So this is the inverse function that you guys have, which a lot of, I think everyone here got it, which is good. Make sure you guys do the same thing in your midterm this week to get the full point, 6 points here. Now, this question, I only interested to find the domain and range of the inverse function. I'm not interested to find the domain and range of the original function. So make sure when you guys do my test, I'm not always asking you to find the domain and range for inverse and the original function. Sometimes I just want one, sometimes I want the other one, sometimes I want both. So read the question carefully, which one I need. So this one, I just need the inverse function. So for the domain, you just take this equals to 0, the denominator equals to 0. So your answer in this case is all real numbers except x equals to 2/3. Okay, so this is the domain for the inverse function. It's all real numbers except x equals to 2/3. And then for the range is taking the domain of the original function. Again, you set this equals to 0 and you get negative 1/3. So your range in this case is all real numbers except x equals to negative 1/3. So this is your answer for this question here. So I'm doing all right here with this question. You guys doing okay? You guys doing all right?
Yes.
Okay, looks like you guys are doing well. All right, so I'm gonna let you guys, if you need to take a picture or whatever, you go ahead and take a picture before I close this. Anyone have any more questions for me on this 2.7? Anyone have any questions before we start going on the review for your midterms, which is more important in this case? All right, so I'm going to review for the midterms here. So before I continue with this, I just want to point out to you guys that the midterm, where is my midterm? There you go. Your midterm is going to be either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday, depends on your last name, A to E, F to N, O to Z. It's going to be in CBT 211, okay? And it starts at 9:30 and it ends at 11. It's a 1.5 hours long. If you finish early, you can leave. You do not need to stay till 11, okay? There are 10 questions in your midterm, 10. There are 10 questions in the midterm. One of the questions is number 25, this one, let me tell you that. So there are 10 questions and one of the questions is 25 and you got one question that is going to be a word problem. Okay, so we'll go through a word problem. One word problem out of the 10 questions and then the other one looks like this, 25. So make sure you guys, the room is in CBT 211. It's in chapter 2, 2.1 to 2.7. Yes, you got 10 questions in there. So if you cannot come during these times or these days because you got something based on your last name, please email to me as soon as possible because it's very important for you to set it up because that room is not really big. I think that room is like can accommodate like 13 or 14 students. So I got 10 students already. So so make sure you guys let me know if you cannot make it to the midterm here. So once, let's say tomorrow is your midterm, let's say tomorrow is a midterm. So what you need to do here is before you come to school, I recommend you to go to the school website when you wake up and go into this COVID-19 update here and then do a self-assessment here. And I want you to do a self-assessment here. And then if you fail the self-assessment here, please do not come to school. You will have to take the Zoom testing on Friday. You just need to email me there saying that, David, I failed this self-assessment. I need to take the test on Friday, the Zoom test. And you will do it like this, okay, like Zoom here. So, so make sure if you pass, good. So when you go in to the school, make sure you go into do you guys know where is CBT 211 at? You guys know where was that? So the first thing you need to do is you have to go to the is that the east or west? The I don't have the map. I should get a map here. Maybe I have a map. Let me see if I can find a college. No. I'm figuring out if I can find a map so you guys know where it is. There you go, there's a map. No, I don't want that one. This map. I wonder. So when you go to the CBT building, there you go. Oh, perfect. So when you go to the CBT building, so this is a CBT building. So this is an east parking lot. Usually a lot of you will park here. And what you do here is you have to go into this main entrance. This is the entrance that you're only allowed to go in. The rest of the entrance is been locked. So you're not allowed, you cannot even go into any entrance. So you have to go into this entrance. And this entrance is where you have to scan your ID, show them that you passed the self-assessment COVID-19 test. And then once they allow you go in here, you make a left. And then you have to take the stairs here. This is the stairs. You have to go in, make a left, and then make a left, and then that's the stairs. You go to the stairs, it's the second floor. You have to go up to the second floor, and then it's on the second floor on, where is the second floor? They should have first floor. Where's the second floor? Okay, second floor. So once you take the stairs, there you go, you take the stairs, it is in here. 211 is right over here. Okay, so once you take the stairs, you go, it's quite a walk, I can tell you that. Now, once you finish your test, where do you exit is you go down these stairs now. Don't go down where you're from, you go down to the stairs, And then when you go down the stairs, you exit on here, because the rest of the part, this is only entrance and this is only exit. So this is the stairs that you see just now over here. So when you go down to these stairs, you will go down right here and then you just exit right there. And then you exit to the parking lot that you park your car. So make sure you come in here, go up to the stairs, go to the corner room here, and then exit when you're done. Same thing happens to your final. It's exactly the same room, which is in CBT 211 here. So make sure you guys come in. If you guys are not sure, please come in early, because I told you at 9 o'clock I have a review. So make sure you guys, if you want to come at 9, we have a review, and then 9 for 30 minutes, and after that you have a test for an hour and a half. Does anyone have any questions with your midterm here? Anyone have any questions on the midterm here? Now, the next thing we have is the review for your midterm, because we got time here. So where do you get the review for the midterm is you go to your textbook, the ebook or the paper book, and then you go to the very end of chapter 2. That is called a chapter test. So you go to chapter 2 and then you go to the very end. They call it a chapter 2 test. It looks very similar to this one, chapter test. And if you go to the back of your book, which looks something like this, they are exactly the same. Okay, so what we're gonna do here in this case, we're gonna do some review here. So so the first question we're gonna talk about here is question number 3. Question number 3. You got a point 0.04. Let's not use 0.4. Make it more difficult. 3.4. Make it more tough. And part A, you have to find parallel, and then we do the perpendicular to this equation of 5x plus 2y equals to 3. So does anyone here know how to do this question 3? Again, what I'm doing here is in your midterm this week, so that's why you better pay attention. Does that it? And then the rest of it will come. I want you to try to do the rest of it, and then we'll do a word problems after this. Anyone know how to do this question parallel? There's a point parallel to this line. Anyone know how to do this? Paul, you haven't used, if you don't have a non-telephone ID, make sure you bring a picture ID. Yep. Once you finish taking, so this is a good question. Once you finish taking a COVID-19, I'll show it to you. It will look something like this. They will send it to you to the email, and you show the email to them. Okay. So I just go into school. There you go. So this is what it looks like once you pass the test. This email, the green one, and what you do is you have your make sure you have this, show this to the security, and then use your picture ID. Make sure you know your do you know your star ID? They need your star ID to log in, so make sure that you use the star ID to log in this case, and show this to them, and they will let you do it. They will let you go in. Okay, this is how they know if you pass a self-assessment. Make sure you bring a picture ID in this case. Okay, so now back to this question. Does anyone know how to do this question? Parallel to this. Anyone? Is it in your test this week?
2y is equal to?
I'm sorry?
We use y minus y1 and m x minus x1.
Yep. But my question is, what is your m here? This is your x1, this is your y1. Yep.
y1. Yeah.
Yep. What is your m? Now my question is, what's your m? Yep, this is the right formula.
2y is equal to?
So you solve for y. Yes, here you have to solve for y here. So you move the 5x over. So you get 2y is equal to 3 minus 5x. And then you divide everything here by 2. You solve for y, like what we did just now. And now you know your slope in this case. And what is your slope in this case?
Minus 5 over 2.
Minus 5 over 2. Yes, this is your slope. And what happens when I say it is parallel? What happens to your slope? Your slope is going to be the same. That means that you do not need to do anything with the slope. So now we know your m, we know your x1 and y1. So what do? We plug it all into this equation. Y minus y1, which is 4, equals to m negative 5 over 2. X minus x1 in this case is 3. Does anyone here? And if you leave your answer like this, I won't give you full point because your answer should be in y equals to mx plus b form. So does anyone here know how to transform this to y equals to mx plus b? Anyone? How do we get rid of this 2? If you have fractions, get rid of it first. How do we get rid of this 2? Like just now, the inverse function you did just now, I multiply this side by 2. So this 2 is gone. So now what we do is we distribute. So distribute the 2 and distribute the negative 5 here. So you got 2y minus 8 equals to negative 5x plus 15. And then you add 8 here. So you will get negative 5x plus 23. And then after that, you divide everything by 2. So this is your answer for parallel. In part B, you will do perpendicular. Now, in your test, you only get one of this. Either it is either parallel or perpendicular, means that I won't give you 2 A and B. You only do 1. Okay, so in your test, make sure you read the question carefully. Are we doing parallel? Are we doing perpendicular? So we're still using back the same point, but my question is, what happens to my slope? Anyone know how to figure out this? This is important, it's in your test. One of the 10 questions. Anyone know? I'm sorry, Moha?
We switch the slope, the negative to make it positive.
So what's the slope in this case?
2 over 5.
Very good. That is correct. So this is the slope. Now you got the slope, you plug it back inside here. So you will have y minus y1, which is 4. Now my slope is not negative 5, 2. It's going to be 2 over 5. And then x minus 3. And then you repeat the same thing what we just did over there. I multiply this by 5. And then the rest, I think you guys know what to do, right? You distribute and then solve for y. So this is how you do this kind of questions. And again, in your midterm this week, you either get parallel or perpendicular, means one, not both. So make sure you read the question really carefully because the slope is the one that plays an important role here when you use this. You guys have any questions for this question here? Anyone? All right, good. Next, we're gonna move on. Is question number, let's do question number 6. So for question number 6, they're asking you to find the domain and range, find the domain and the zeros for this function. X minus 5 over by 2x squared minus x. So do you guys remember how you find your domain in this case? This is what we just did on that homework, right? The 25, right? You have to make the denominator
Make sure it doesn't equal 0.
Make sure it doesn't equal 0. But this one is a special one compared to what we did on the 25, question 25, like early on, because this one has an x squared. So what do we? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. You're going to factor the x out. So you get 2x minus 1 equals to 0. So how many answers do we have in this case?
2.
2. Yes. Last time you only have 1. Remember, x cannot be 3/5 or something like that. This one has 2. X cannot be equal. X is 0 here. And x is what?
1/2.
1/2. So don't forget, this is not your answer. How do you write your answer in this case? All real numbers except what? These two numbers, right? X equals to 0 and x equals to 1/2. So this is what we call as your domain. So make sure you know how to do this. If you have x squared involved, you will have 2 answers in this case. Last time you don't have an x squared, you just have x, then you only got 1 answer. Part B is asking you for zeros. So how do we find the zeros of a function? Does anyone know how to find the zeros of a function? Anyone? This is all coming up in the midterm this week. In order for us to find a 0, you just need to set everything here becomes 0. So in order for you to find a 0, you take x minus 5 over by 2x squared minus x, make it equals to 0. And then what happens when you multiply this everything here by 2x squared minus x? Do you know what happens when you multiply it with 0? What you get? All this will become,
You get 0.
you get 0. So we have x minus 5 here. So what is your 0 in this case?
5.
Your 0 is 5. So this is how we find your domain and your zeros for this question 6. So I will recommend you to go home and try question 7. Again, if you doesn't have a textbook, you can use the ebook that I told you. It is going to be the same as question 6 and 7. They are the same. They just put it in a different format. Okay. So now we're going to concentrate here is your word problem. So I'm going to do a word problem here. So this is a word problem. Yes, you will get one word problem in your test, and this is a word problem that you will get. So the word problem says that the cost of running a restaurant is 50 cents for every let's say not restaurant, let's say ice cream place. Okay. So 50 cents for every scoop of ice cream. So this is the cost of for the ice cream is every scoop of ice cream costs you 50 cents, and it costs also $35 to run it. Now let's say $100 to run it. So what happened here is that the cost for this ice cream place, if you want to open this ice cream place, is 50 cents per every scoop. That means that it costs you 50 cents to make that ice cream. And this $100 is also a cost that, like, let's say you have to hire, you have to pay the rent for the building, you have to hire someone else, right? To scoop ice cream, you have to pay the bills, you know, the electric and the gas and all these bills. So let's say it costs $100 a day. Okay, so the revenue is gonna be how much you think the ice cream will sell. Let's say $3 per scoop. Okay, so so the revenue means that you sell. So you're selling this ice cream $3 per scoop. So the question A is asking is, what is the cost in this case? Where X in this case is every scoop of ice cream. So does anyone know how to figure out X here, the cost? This is in your midterm this week
You
again.
private message you the answer.
So the cost is C, which is what? Can you write this in math?
Yeah, it's a 0.50 C or X
X, yep, we use X for scoop.
plus 100.
Plus 100, yep. That is the cost. Next, the revenue. R. How do you find the revenue? Is this one. This is the revenue.
It's 3x.
It's just 3x, yes. Next is the profit. Now, this is something you need to know. Profit is actually revenue minus cost. Very important formula. And no formulas are provided in the midterm here, so make sure you know this. So how do we do this is
3x
3x
minus 0.50x minus 100.
Yes. So a lot of students put add 100 here, and this is going to be wrong. Why this is wrong is because you have to minus the whole thing. And this minus will be distributed. And when you distribute it, this will become negative 0.5x minus 100. This is where a lot of students get wrong here. Is because of the sign. So what is 3x minus 0.5x?
2.5x.
X minus 100.
Minus 100.
And the last one is part D. You have to find the break-even point. What is the break-even point? The break-even point means that your profit is equals to 0. So break-even point means that you have to set this equation equals to 0. And you have to solve for x here. Do you guys know how to solve for x here? And that is what we call as a break-even point. So this will be what? 2.5x equals to 100, right? And then you have to divide this by 2.5. Anyone got an answer? X is what? Calculators. 100 divided by 2.5. You get what?
40.
40. So that means that if you sell 40 scoops of ice cream, your profit is 0. What is the meaning when I say your profit is 0? It means that you don't gain anything. You don't lose, you don't gain. You're right at what we call as break-even point, 0. But if you sell less than 40 scoops a day, then you will lose money. But if you sell more than 40 scoops a day, like 41, 42, then you will start earning profit. So the break-even point is where your profit, your cost and your revenue are equal, means your profit is 0. You guys doing okay here? This is coming out in your midterm this week. So make sure you guys know how to write cost in terms of X, how do you write revenue in terms of X, how do you write profit in terms of X, and then find the break-even point. Questions with this word problem? So, so this is also coming up in your midterm. So I would recommend you guys to go ahead and practice this, okay? Or if you want, you can use the review, the chapter test. It's the same thing. So practice this, and then 10, Mercedes, there are 10 questions in the test. I told you, yep. There are 10 questions in the test. So one of them is a word problem, which we just did it over here. And then some, I think we did quite a few questions already. So make sure you guys come, if you want to get more review, come at 9 o'clock, 30 minutes before the test, then I will review it more. I won't touch the word problem. I won't touch the one that we did today. I will do something else more. So I will do like maybe doing something with like 14, 15, 16, where you do the parent function and the transformations and the graph, and then maybe doing what we call as a piecewise function graph here, like 13. So those are the questions, and then find the average rate of change. So so make sure you guys really do this. And then there's one questions that is not in here. It's not in this review for the final midterms. That number is that one is actually is in 2 point. Let's see, where can I find that follow? Difference of quotient. So this is the one that is also coming up in your test, the difference of quotient. Remember last time when we did this, x squared, last time I think we did x cubed, right? I told you guys we are not doing x cubed in the test. So you will have an x squared. So make sure you do look at the difference of quotient. This is also in your midterm, which is not found in your review here. So when you guys meet at 9 o'clock for the test, we will talk about the difference of quotient first, which is this one. Something like this, the x squared minus 4x plus 7. And then after that, this is also coming up in your midterm, but with a different function. It's in square, not cube. So make sure you understand how you do this. And also the rest of this review here. Okay, that's it for today. Does anyone have any questions for me? I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop